Burrow's furniture is built for the way you live. From ensuring easy assembly and disassembly to honoring highly requested new colors for their award-winning seating, they always have their customers in mind. Their modular seating is made out of durable materials to last and grow with you. And with Burrow, you always get fast, free shipping. Get up to 60% off during Burrow's Memorial Day sale at burrow.com/ACAST. That's burrow.com/ACAST. burrow.com/ACAST.
The mamas, bonus moms, office moms, moms of moms. This Mother's Day, give back to the ones that have given us so much. 1-800-Flowers helps you celebrate all your amazing moms with handmade bouquets, sweet treats, gourmet food, and one-of-a-kind gifts. Ordered easily and delivered fresh. For a limited time, you can save up to 40% off Mother's Day bestsellers at 1-800-Flowers.com/ACAST. Don't wait. Order today and save up to 40% at 1-800-Flowers.com/ACAST.
Hello, you are listening to Just Films and That. This is the podcast where we talk about films we think deserve a little bit more love. Whether they're underrated or underseen, we're going to talk about them. So, let's see what it's going to be this week. Yes, welcome to Just Films and That. I'm the host for this week, Josh Hallam, and joined as ever by my co-host, Alice Oliver, and it was her turn to pick this week. So, Guns Akimbo, that's what we're talking about from this week. Guns Akimbo from 2019. So spoiler warnings if you've not seen Daniel Radcliffe, but he's got guns for hands. Alice, you chose this one. So tell the guys at home, if I haven't already, a little bit about what it's about. Why did you bloody pick it? Why did you pick it for this podcast?
So, Guns Akimbo is an action comedy, so it's set sometime in the not-too-distant future or an alternative future, and our protagonist is Miles, so he's played by Daniel Radcliffe. So he's a computer programmer who likes to troll people online, and quite quickly his smart mouth gets him in trouble as an underground fight club called Schism decides to make him their next target after seeing what he's been saying online. So they track him down, drug him, and bolt guns to his hands, earning him the name of Guns Akimbo. He's then forced to come up against a young woman called Nix, who is associated with Schism against her will, with the whole thing being live streamed to generate that engagement. So most of the film is Nix hunting down her new target and Miles learning how to get by with guns for hands. It's big, it's loud, it's fast, it's chaotic. If you've seen the cyberpunk anime, it kind of reminds me of that a little bit in terms of its energy and violence. So just to give the audience an idea of the sort of vibe that it's giving off, in my opinion. Why did I pick it? It's underrated and it's underseen. Okay. And that is, there's no debate in that, right. Josh. It is underrated and it's underseen. It's done. We're decided.
Okay, so underrated and underseen.
Yeah, and I am confident in my opinion of that. Obviously, it'll be interesting to hear what you have to say.
Well,
but yeah, it's both.
In terms of the ratings, we'll come to that. But in underseen, I suppose to frame us talking about it is important to say that this was one, I believe, that was very much affected by COVID. Mm-hmm. You know, it was whether I mean, there's no way of saying whether it would have been a huge hit or not, but I believe it was affected by COVID. I think it was due for release. COVID happened. They couldn't get people in the cinemas, so it went to streaming. And obviously, as things can happen on streaming, things got lost. So it's underrated, it's underseen, but just bear that in mind as you listen to us talking about it.
So I'm not sure on this one, Josh. I reckon you probably haven't seen it, but had you seen Guns Akimbo before?
No. So I hadn't seen it. I was aware of it coming out because it was the Daniel Radcliffe, but he's got guns for hands film, right? And I remember wanting to see it and just never getting around to watching it. So I was really excited when you picked it. Really, really excited to watch it because it's it's such a strange concept. It could have gone one way, it could have gone the other. I also had an inkling. This very rarely happens, but I had an inkling this was on your list.
Oh, interesting.
Because you went on your Radcliffe binge.
I did. After Swiss Army Man.
After Swiss Army Man, so you were a bit of a Danaholic for a while, and we did Swiss Army Man with Pav and Neil. We've done Imperium. Mm-hmm. Which we did a little while ago, which I enjoyed, and this is must be the third one we've done. Must be the third Daniel Radcliffe film we've done. So he's catching up with Tom Hardy. So I was interested to watch it. So we'll come to you then. So obviously you've seen it before, but now you watched it with that critical eye. Did it land as well this time? And if so, what did you like about it?
So, it pretty much landed pretty hard, to be honest. Like, I did see a few things that were wrong with it. And, from a filmmaking point of view, maybe there were a couple of things that I was like, oh, that could have been handled better. Maybe that could be a bit different. But overall, I just kind of love the whole thing, to be honest. Like, I really relish in the chaos and the madness of it. I think the pacing and the energy, it's like exhausting and it's intense. And I'm just so into it. And the way it conjures these feelings is through things like music and editing, the aesthetic, cinematography, and you've got some video game style graphics in there as well. So as soon as Miles has the guns bolted to his hands, everything just sort of becomes this race against time because he's being hunted down by Nyx. So she's played by Samara Weaving, and she appears to be just completely ruthless and capable. And the impression that we're given is that she's been involved with Schism for quite a while, and now she wants out, basically. And they seem to keep promising her freedom without actually delivering. But as far as she's concerned, this time around, if she kills Miles, then she gets to stop, basically. And that is all the motivation she needs. And she feels like this unstoppable force that's hunting him down. And that's where a lot of the pace and the movement of the film comes from, is her chasing of him. And you could say, not a million miles away from something like Terminator. In that regard.
Yeah, they're definitely like unstoppable objects sort of thing. Yeah, absolutely. Just to come on to that, I loved her as a character. I thought she was my favourite part of the film.
Okay, yeah.
But I think we're getting there. We're getting more female action centered films and stuff. But I want more of Nick. I want more Nyx. I want more. I want more of her. Do a prequel. Like, I thought she was brilliant. I've not really seen Samara Weaving in much. All I know about Samara Weaving is that she's sort of quite up and coming. She's done quite a few things, and she's somehow related to Hugo Weaving. I think she's like his niece or something like that.
I did wonder.
That's all I know about her. But I thought she was the stand-up character and stand-up performer in this. I thought she was brilliant. She's got some great lines, she's almost like a bit. There's bits where she's quipping lines. She reminded me of like John McClane. In places. Like, she had all the best features of a lot of great action characters, and I really, really liked her. So yeah, definitely loved it. I mean, I have to say, just to come on in terms of like what were my first impressions. Like I said when I get the lead up there, I thought it could have gone one way, could have gone the other, and it definitely went the way of, I thought it was great. Really enjoyed it. Really enjoyed it. I had a lot of stuff in there that I really, really liked. But anyway, what else did you like about it?
Oh, I'm pleased to hear that, Josh, because sometimes I'm not sure. Like, sometimes I'll go back and watch these films and I'm like, oh yeah, this is a bit of Josh. Or sometimes I'm like, nah, he's not going to be into this.
What did you think this time?
I had no idea, but I was more leaning. I do think I was more leaning towards you not really being into it. Like, just being a bit like, it's just, like, it feels just too messy and it's too chaotic and it's too loud and all this sort of thing. So I'm very pleased to hear that that's what you thought about it. But yeah, Nyx is class as well. There are some excellent sequences of violence in this film, right? And the best one for me is Nyx, when she is just blowing the brains out of dozens of people who are all just running at her. Now, I can't exactly recall what she's doing and why she's doing it, but essentially she turns up at this like warehouse style building, and I think it's at the behest of Schism, and then all these men start running at her like enemies in a video game, and she just shoots the crap out of them, and it is just an absolute frenzy. Like, the editing is manic and disorientating, the lighting and the framing are so effective, and there's this really dirty cover of Ballroom Blitz playing as it happens, and I just thought it was the coolest thing ever. And then there's a couple more sequences like this throughout the film as well. They're really dynamic and energetic, all this stylized violence. And you know me, I love a bit of stylish violence in a film, Josh, and I'm not ashamed to admit it, because at no point have I ever watched something like this and wanted to emulate it. So personally, I don't see an issue with it. I love it. I just love the effort and like the choreography that's gone into it.
If it's done well, then it's great. Like this, like it's done. It's sort of got the action and the violence in this has got the best parts of an anime, a comic book, and a video game. Like all. I've not seen the anime that you mentioned before, but I know similar ones and the sort of thing it'd be going for. But yeah, it really. I mean, obviously, the whole thing is set as if the whole schism thing is like a video game. So it really mainly made me think of video games, but also you got comic book stuff in there as well, and anime as well. So I mean, I thought it looked brilliant, and that's not just the action, like the world that they build in terms of this set doesn't say when, but it's just near future. So whenever that is, and they do a really good job of not hammering you over the head with this world they've built, but just subtle differences of how it looks and stuff like that. So I thought that was really good. And like I say, with the action as well, they use quick edits and hyper realism, so the action feels more brutal and more cartoony in places. I mean, it really is almost like an assault on the senses in places, isn't it? It reminded me of, again, I've done a lot of comparisons of this, but sort of the Matrix, Mad Max, and the Kingsman films. Like if you think of the way the action is in the Kingsman films, it's a bit like that, and with those really quick, almost sped up. But it really
definitely
works. It really works, doesn't it?
Yeah, sped up, and then at times slows down. Like there'd be moments where she's shooting. It's all like, oh God, it's mad, it's crazy. And then as the camera sort of sweeps past the guns in her hand and it slows down and you get the flash of the bullet leaving the gun and stuff. And I just love the sort of, the kind of almost roller coaster effect and the sort of instant stop and start of that, and how sort of visually and emotionally jarring that can be. It's kind of like fast, and then we'll slow it right down and bring it down again. But yeah, just had such an impact and was just really like, and because it's not that long, I think it's only about like 100, not even, sorry, it's like 93 minutes or so.
Yeah,
So it's
like
only
like
just
bang on, isn't it?
Yeah, only just over. And I think obviously that's really that works in its favor. I think if it had been any longer, you would struggle a bit to be able to sustain yourself throughout that. Like, yeah, because it's so intense. You'd get about an hour and a half in, and you'd go, "Oh shit, man! I need a break. I need to take a rest from this. This is too intense." But the whole thing, the way that the whole thing is delivered to the audience for me just works. Like as a package, it just works so well. Just finally, so like I said, the music had a real impact on me. So there's a few great covers in there, but also just some great pieces of score as well as a really effective use of diegetic sounds that really enhances the action and helps the whole film to just leap off the screen. In general, the whole thing is just ambitious, it's loud, it's in your face, it's completely wacky, and sometimes, Josh, that just really speaks to me, and it just really did in this instance. What else did you like about it?
Yeah, so I mean, first, it's a great concept. It's it could have been awful, but I think, a game that's almost interactive and the players don't get to choose whether they're in on it or not. Mm-hmm. It's not totally original, because you've got things like the Running Man and other stuff like that it very much borrows from and stuff like that. But I like that idea of taking it and making it uber violent or uber kinetic and bringing a certain type of stylistic energy and charm to it. So I really, really enjoyed that. And I was interested to see where it goes. Because I said, stylistically, I loved the way it looked and sounded, and the action was really, I mean, it's very much an action film with bits of comedy in there, sort of an action sci-fi, I think, if you were gonna say it was. Let's talk a little bit about the performances then. Let's talk about Daniel Radcliffe. So I thought that was one of the reasons you picked it, because when you found it, when you're watching all your Daniel Radcliffe films, I've talked before, I don't think he is the strongest actor. But of the 3 films we've done of his, I've enjoyed him in all of them. And I thought he was great in this. I thought he was on his A game. He's got a great frantic energy in places. He isn't the action hero in this. Nix is the action hero. He's the what's the
computer
word?
programmer.
He's the reluctant hero. He's in there because he basically shot his mouth off a bit too much after a couple of beers, and someone has come along and essentially kidnapped him. I thought he had a great frantic energy in places as he's trying to essentially make things up as he goes along. And they do find good moments of comedy in that, like things like going to the toilet and getting dressed, and how would you actually operate with guns, bolted to your hands and stuff like that. So I thought he had a good energy in places. Also, when he needed to be, because if you think about the character, he's not particularly likable in the way he behaves, particularly in the first 20 minutes or so. But when he had to be likable, or more importantly, when you had to root for him, I did. I didn't want him to die and stuff like that. At the end, I wanted him to be okay. I wanted him to sort of get out of the, get out of what he's in and stuff like that. And yeah, really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed his performance. Like I say, already touched on it a bit before, but love Samara Weaving. I thought she was probably the standout for me. And Ned Dennehy as well, who plays, I can't remember what the villain's called, Richter, yeah. I thought he's one of these, he pops up in a lot of things. He's been in a lot of British telly. I think he's Irish. He's been in Peaky Blinders. He's in Good Omens. He's really good in that. He's been in a lot of stuff.
Who is he in Good Omens?
One of the demons that goes after David Tennant. He's like one of the boss demons. I can't remember what he's called, but he goes after David Tennant in that. Well, he's got a lot of hair in it, whereas he's got no hair in this, so it's very different. So yeah, I mean, overall, I really enjoyed it. It had a lot of dark humor to it as well. So they approach the whole thing. The characters in Schism sort of approach the whole thing with gallows humor, particularly Nix, which is why she's probably the standout character of you could die at any moment, everyone's out to get you, sort of thing. So overall, it's it isn't for kids. It's very much an 18. But if you like stylized sci-fi violence, like I said before, I think if you like The Matrix, if you like Mad Max, if you're into some certain video games, certain anime, I think this is probably a bit of you. So I was pleasantly surprised because. I say pleasantly surprised. There was part of me that I went in rooting for this film.
Oh, did you? Oh, that's interesting.
I went in wanting it to be good because sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. I like a strong concept. And that's what I think what they had here. But it's a strong, simple concept, isn't it, essentially? But then you've seen other ones where they're not so good. But this is, thankfully, one of the better ones. Okay, so we'll move on then to the dislike section, or if there's anything that we didn't like, anything we'd change. Now, you've hinted there, Alice, earlier that there might be a couple of things, but I don't get the impression there's loads coming my way here. So what didn't you like about Guns Akimbo?
So that, yes, there are a couple of things, and a couple of them are just... Most of it is just kind of like silly little stuff that I just couldn't let go of,
Not enough weapons stitched to limbs.
Pretty much. I wanted machetes, I wanted broadswords, a couple of axes in there. I want to see the whole range, please. Where are the sequels to this? That's what I want to know. So the main thing that I realised as I was writing my notes is that quite a lot of the same sort of stuff was falling into the dislikes pile, and a lot of it was around some of the decisions that Miles makes and some of his choices, and then my inability to fully suspend my disbelief that this is a film, right? So he really endangers Nova. So that's his ex-girlfriend, they're sort of rekindling things. They're sort of getting back in touch. She's like
not fully his ex-girlfriend, but also not at the same time, isn't she?
Yeah. And she's sent him a message. It seems like, she might be interested in sort of meeting up again, that sort of thing. And he just completely endangers her by agreeing to meet up with her and going to see her, right? He knows at this point that Nix is after him. So then going to see Nova seems really selfish and unnecessary. And then on top of that, instead of explaining to her what has happened, he decides to just show her the guns bolted to his hands with no explanation. So naturally, she freaks the fuck out and runs the hell out of there. And I was just a bit like, you could have just said, like, you could have just been like, oh yeah, Schism have got me, they've done this or whatever. But he didn't for some reason. So I was just a bit like, ugh, why have you done that? And then it's the same with the police. So he approaches the police for help. He manages to get their attention. But then instead of trying to explain from afar with his hands hidden or something what has happened, he instead thinks it's a great idea to walk up to them, Guns Akimbo, and expects this to be a fine situation. So we know that Schism are famous in this world and that the police are trying to be all over them. So if you explain that this is something that they've done to you, you'd think that there'd be some level of understanding from them and they'd at least know what you're talking about, but he doesn't. He just he creates a situation now where the police are after him and they think he's a gun-wielding murderer sort of thing. And the other thing that's sort of similar to this is that he should have ditched his phone a lot earlier if he didn't want to be tracked, right? So he goes to a lot of effort to try and get the tracking software that Schism have put on his phone removed. And I was like, just ditch your phone. Just leave it. Just leave it there so they can't find you. I was like, again, you just go through this extra effort unnecessarily.
Some people, Alice, they're always on the phones, aren't they? Do you know what I mean?
That's the thing.
The kids and that, they're always on their phones, aren't they, Alice? No one's connecting anymore, are they, Alice? Do you know what I mean?
I'm back in my day. Yeah. But like, it was just weird that like that would be the first thing I'd do. It's like if I knew they were tracking me, it's like, well, I'd just
leave it at my apartment.
Just leave it somewhere, right? So it was just like, there was just a few things like that when I was watching it. And, when you think, oh, that was dumb, wasn't it? But, didn't massively impact my overall enjoyment of it. The other thing is that Miles's narration is used way too sporadically. So it feels inconsistent and a little bit jarring every time it comes in. So you get a fairly good chunk of it at the beginning, and then it just sort of comes and goes at what feels like random times, and sometimes with really massive gaps in between. So you kind of forget that there was narration. It's like, oh, I haven't heard him actually say anything in his own mind or whatever for like 25 minutes or whatever. So I think it would have been better for the film to have committed one way or the other. So either his narration is going to be a common feature of the film or just get rid of it completely. But the way it was used just felt a little bit too random and like a bit, they didn't really know what to do with it. But there were a couple of moments where they thought it was absolutely essential, so they kept it in. But if that's the case, just work on it a little bit more, maybe do a bit more, maybe every 5 minutes, every 10 minutes or something.
We've seen this before. Do you think it's a lack of confidence in your exposition?
Possibly.
We've definitely had this conversation before where there's been another film where there's the narration and it's not
Legend,
consistent. Was it Legend?
Beach.
That's
it.
It
was Legend
it's
and
not,
the Beach.
Yeah, so it's not consistent, so it's not there to drive the story along. It's almost like they've gone, add it in because it might not be clear.
Yeah, it's almost like they've done the film, they've watched it back, and they're like, oh, maybe we need to do something about that or something. That's what it feels like anyway. So in that case, I'm just like, do away with it altogether, or work on it more and have that be a more prominent feature of the film, because I have got no issue with narration if it's done properly. Sometimes it's really necessary and sometimes it really enhances a film. But if you don't really know what the purpose of it is and why you're including it, it can just start to feel like a little bit messy and a little bit random. So those were kind of the only things really for me. Like on the whole, really enjoyable experience. This is my sort of thing. What about you? I reckon you've got a couple of things to say about this.
Not loads overall. I think it's a daft, silly film that, as in a good way to enjoy. There's the odd thing. So the first one is that. There's the odd, and I was joking there about people on their phones, but there is the odd point where it goes a bit Black Mirror and seems to be trying to make points about things like online trolls or being, like you say, being on your phone or not being able to cope as a young person in the world, blah, blah, blah. I don't think he needed it, particularly stuff around being an online troll. It's not going to stop him. So let's just have more guns with hands and action. Why not? That was one little thing. The other thing is I do think sometimes perhaps they sacrificed emotionality for stylized violence. So I don't mean that in terms of the violence, not bothering the violence. And I know I said earlier it's a silly film, but there isn't really any emotional depth to it. So because there's no depth to it, so there was bits where when I first, obviously I was writing my notes as I watched it. And again, spoilers, I know we've done spoiler warnings, but spoilers for the film if you've not seen it. But there's a whole subplot that Nix is in schism because of something to do with her dad as a police officer, right? And it adds nothing. It adds nothing to the film. It seems to be there only so that Miles can say to Nix, they killed your family, to give her something to do to be even more unhinged, except she's already unhinged, so it doesn't really add anything to the film. So when her dad dies, I thought, oh, that's a shame. I would have liked to have seen a happy ending for Nix. But then she dies anyway.
She does. She gets blown up. She gets blown up.
So, so maybe they're making a point around that. Maybe it doesn't need that emotionality. But for me, because of the way they did that, I thought, oh, that's a shame. They could add a little bit of emotional depth there, and they sort of drip fed it you and then took it away again. But maybe that's it probably is a choice to do that. But I thought that was a shame. I thought you could have had some level of emotional depth there, and we didn't get it. So I thought, not necessarily a massive dislike, but perhaps a little bit of a missed opportunity. What do you reckon to that?
I totally get what you're saying. I think for me, I did sort of somewhat enjoy kind of how brutal it was. It's
the lack
sort
of
like,
emotional depth.
Yeah, because it's like Nix, she comes across Miles, and he's like, obviously she's trying to kill Miles, and then he sort of uses this as his bargaining chip, doesn't he? It's like, oh no, I'm not the problem. Schism's the problem. Let's take him down immediately. And he's like, oh, Schism killed your family and they killed your dad as well. There he is. and like his body's right there and he's been shot in the head and she's just there sort of looking at it. So then that's pretty brutal. And then you think, oh, is she going to get her big moment? And, you know, is she going to get her happy ending sort of thing? And I guess in a really morbid way, she kind of does, because she gets to die knowing that she's taken out a whole load of Schism with her because she straps explosives to herself and just sort of walks into the lion's den sort of thing and then blows it all up. So I was sort of on board with how brutal it was, but I will sort of say that it did feel a little bit out of place when compared to the rest of the film, that really there is no emotional depth. Like, I didn't care about Miles and Nova's relationship at all. Like, there was no depth there at all. Like you say, Miles ain't even that likable for most of the film. His colleagues aren't likable. Like, there's no one in there really who you're kind of rooting for that hard in that way until a bit towards the end, and you are hoping that Schism get taken down in that. And it is really all more about Nyx, isn't it? You just she's the badass. She's the one sort of thing, and she didn't get a happy ending either. So yeah, I do sort of somewhat agree with you, but I kind of enjoyed the brutalness of the lack of emotion almost.
Okay, so we'll move on to talking about the critical reception then, and then we'll decide if it is indeed underrated or underseen. So I haven't seen the critical reception. Mm-hmm. How do I think it did, Alice?
How do you think it did, and what would you give it, please?
I think this is a solid 6.5 out of 10.
Okay.
Maybe a 7.
Mm-hmm.
I think it probably did quite badly because of what you've said. You've said definitely underrated. So you've been quite strong on that. So I don't think we're getting into like silly figures. You know, your 20s, 20% and stuff like that. But I think maybe we're talking like a 4 or a 5. Let's say a 4.5 out of 10, which definitely would be underrated. I think we could. In terms of before critical reception, I think we could safely say it's pretty underseen, right?
I mean, I'm going to tell you about the box office.
Okay, let's go then. Let's go.
Yeah.
Let's go. Give us the scores then. Give us the scores.
Okay, so on IMDb at the time of recording, it gets 6.3. So kind of in line with what you said.
Not bad.
Then over on Rotten Tomatoes, the critics give it 52%. And that is from 72 ratings.
Okay.
And then the audience give it 40%. Ooh. And that is with fewer than 50 ratings. And just to compare, when we did Bo Burnham Inside, I thought that was underseen, and I had a look at the audience ratings, and that was 1,000 plus.
Wow.
Because normally you're looking at tens and tens of thousands from the users, from the audience, right? So that I thought that was staggeringly low when I saw how many people had actually been able to go on and rate it. In terms of the box office and the budget, so the budget was estimated to be around $15 million, and the box office figures suggest that it made $1 million only.
Yes. Okay. Yes. I mean, I think for me, I'm going to say that's an easy decision for me. It's underrated and underseen. So that averages out, those scores average out at 51. Or 5, just over 5 out of 10.
Definitely
I think,
underrated.
I think it's underrated, and I think based on what you've said there, it's underseen. What do you agree? Are you happy with that? Having watched it again,
100%. Like I was so. Sometimes you just don't know how it's going to go, do you? Like when you put on those critical glasses and you think, right, I need to analyze this film as a film. And I watched it and I was like, nah, this is actually good, man. And then I went back to double check the critical reception. I was like, nah, how is it that low? So for me, this is getting like a 76 or a 77, like easily. We're into the high 7s with this. And if you're into chaos and madness and colors and crazy editing and all that sort of thing, this is definitely for you. But I think it's done so well that I feel like even if that isn't for you, you should still be able to appreciate the quality. And I don't think that those scores suggest that at all. So for me, definitely underrated and definitely underseen.
I would completely agree. So there we go, Guns Akimbo, underrated and underseen. If you're a fan of some colourful, stylised violence and video games and all that stuff, then give it a watch. I think it might be up your street. Alice, then next week, it's your last one before you go off.
OMG,
it's your last one.
It's happening.
It is. It's the last one before you go off and have a wee Barbie. So it is my turn to choose, technically, but I'm happy to be a gentleman and let you pick your pre-mat leave film. What do you want to pick? What do you want to talk about before you go off?
Okay, so there was I had a few different ones on this list. They're quite a similar vein, to be honest.
Any pregnancy-themed ones?
No, there wasn't
Rosemary's
actually.
Baby. Knocked Up.
Three Men and a Baby.
Three Men and a Baby, yeah. Look Who's Talking. All the baby themes.
No, none of those, funnily enough. But I thought, what's just something that is just easy watching, nice to watch, a bit of a rest after Guns Akimbo. What's the sort of thing that you could potentially watch with a baby?
Yeah.
And I thought, you know what? Let's go for just something I'm going to enjoy, not necessarily underrated or underseen. But anyway, for next week, we're going to watch and talk about I Love You, Man.
Okay, I Love You, Man. Okay, well, join us next week where we're going to be talking about I Love You, Man. In the meantime, if you'd like to get in touch with us, it's filmsandthatpod@gmail.com. We're on all the social medias. If you search for Just Films and That on Facebook, Twitter, /X, Instagram, or TikTok or YouTube, you'll find us. We're always putting content out there, so do give us a like and a follow. We're on Patreon as well, so if you'd like to support the pod, get a little bit of extra content, then click the link in the episode description and you'll find us where for £1 a month you can get extended ad-free episode you get access to a little bit early. Well, all that remains to be said is we'll see you next week. It's goodbye from me. Cheerio.
Bye.
Hi, I'm Daniel, founder of Pretty Litter. Did you know cats tend to hide symptoms of sickness and pain? I learned this the hard way after losing my cat, Gingy. So I created Pretty Litter, a health monitoring litter that helps detect early signs of illness by changing colors, saving you money and potentially your cat's life. Pretty Litter is veterinarian developed, and it's the easiest way to keep tabs on your fur baby's health right at home.
Go to prettylitter.com and use code ACAST for 20% off your first order and a free cat toy. Terms and conditions apply. See site for details.
The mamas, bonus moms, office moms, moms of moms. This Mother's Day, give back to the ones that have given us so much. 1-800-Flowers helps you celebrate all your amazing moms with handmade bouquets, sweet treats, gourmet food, and one-of-a-kind gifts. Ordered easily and delivered fresh. For a limited time, you can save up to 40% off Mother's Day bestsellers at 1-800-Flowers.com/ACAST. Don't wait. Order today and save up to 40% at 1-800-Flowers.com/ACAST.
Hey, it's Paige DeSorbo from Giggly Squad. High quality fashion without the price tag. Say hello to Quince. I'm snagging high-end essentials like cozy cashmere sweaters, sleek leather jackets, fine jewelry, and so much more. With Quince being 50 to 80% less than similar brands. And they partner with factories that prioritize safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing. I love that. Luxury quality within reach. Go to quince.com/style to get free shipping and 365-day returns on your next order. Quince.com/style.